My name is Javier Estrada. I've been at IESE for about 20 plus years in the finance department, and I've been the academic director of the Global Executive MBA for almost 2-3 years now. And it's been challenging years, actually. I got 1 year of peace and almost 2 years of COVID. So the two last, the latest two have been a little bit difficult. But and so I've been here for quite some time. I've been doing. I was the director of a program on executive education that took place between Miami and New York for almost 10 years, over 10 years actually, before being the academic director of the Global Executive MBA. And most of my work and my consulting work is on portfolio management. So that's a little bit of the background of what I do. This is a program, we have 3 levels of MBA. Which are different in format and mostly in terms of the seniority. So we have the MBA, the regular MBA, I should say, that is the largest program. Then we have the Executive MBA, and then we have the Global Executive MBA. And as you go from the MBA to the Executive to the Global Executive MBA, the average age and the average years of experience, work experience, actually are increasing. So the MBA, it's roughly 27, 28 years of age in terms of experience. The Executive MBA is close to 32, 33, 34 in terms of age, and the Global Executive MBA, it's about 40 years of age in terms of age, and about 15 in terms of years of experience. So, we have less experience in the MBA, more in the EMBA, and more in the GEMBA. And in terms of these 3 programs, ours is like the Executive MBA, is actually part-time. The MBA, the regular MBA, is full-time. Executive and Global Executive MBAs are part-time. And the characteristic of our format is that we have basically 2-week modules, and we have 6 of those, and then we have 1-week modules. So we have 2-week modules that take place over about a year, roughly, and then we have 3 1-week modules that take place over about another 6 months. And so we start in Barcelona with 2 weeks, then we move to New York for another 2 weeks, then we go to Munich, then we go back to New York, then we go to San Francisco, and then we go to Shanghai. So those are the 6 2-week modules that we have, and all those are required. So students have no choice there. They basically have to take all those modules and all the courses in those modules. As we move into the 1-week modules, and then that's what we call the electives. And so we offer 3. And if we partner with CIPS, which we always do up until COVID, we always do, then we have 3 more. CIPS is the China European International Business School. And so we have some sort of agreement with them in which they offer 3 electives, which they open to our students, and we offer 3 electives, which we open to their students. So, if we count those, we have 6 electives, out of which our students have to choose 2 1-week electives. And then finally, we have a 1-week elective, which we call final week, and the last day of that week is their graduation. So it's basically a total of 6 times 2, that's 12, plus 3 times 1, that's 15 weeks over about a year and a half. So that there's a bit of almost a month and a half, 2 months between each of the modules. And that doesn't mean they don't work. They still work part-time for us and part-time in their jobs, but residential, which is what we call, is basically 15 weeks. The answer to that is a little bit of everything. Like an MBA, this is a program in which we try to give them a very broad scope. So they have from finance to economics to human resources to marketing to organizational behavior to IT to operations. They have a little bit of everything. And that is actually the idea, not only of this Global Executive MBA, but of MBAs in general. I myself am a PhD, and in a PhD, you take a few general courses, but sooner rather than later. You tend to focus on one specific field and one specific topic. We don't do that in the Global Executive MBA. Of course, we give them electives, and the two electives that they have to choose out of the 6 that I mentioned before, those are basically based on topics. So, for example, we have an elective in New York, which is mostly based on marketing. We have an elective in Sao Paulo, which is mostly based on doing business in emerging markets. We have an elective in Barcelona, which is mostly based on entrepreneurship. So if they want to specialize a little bit more, they can always pick an elective in which we go deeper into a given topic. And then we have something else, which we call the ICP, the in-company program, in which the students by teams, they work on a specific company, on a specific problem. And that is very, very focused, obviously, because they focus on one company and one problem, and they basically have to deal with that problem, propose a solution, write a report, and that is actually an integral part of the Global Executive MBA. So in terms of scope, again, I think the scope is very broad, and as we're actually approaching the end of the program, they have opportunities to focus more on what they really prefer or they really like. There's many aspects to that answer. One is, I think that we always like to emphasize that IESE, we use a lot the case method. We are not the only school that does that, but by the case we basically mean these cases written by ourselves and Harvard and Darden and many other schools, in which they isolate on a specific problem, on a specific company, and then there's a class discussion about it. So we do have a large proportion of the sessions, I would say, have to do with cases. But of course, we have lectures, which we call interactive lectures, because it's not a professor basically talking for an hour and a half. Basically, there's interaction with the students, which we always tend to foster. We have a lot of guest speakers that we regularly invite to whatever of the places that we go. Whenever we go to a place which is not Barcelona, we obviously try to expose students to the local experience. So not only do we have guest speakers, but we also have company visits. And so a lot of the time that we go to a place is spent on visiting different companies, so they can actually not only talk to business people on the ground where we go, but also they get to know local companies too. So we have that. We have a business plan that they have to do, which is part of the entrepreneurship courses. So, they know how to actually get started on writing a business plan for a company. We have the ICP that I mentioned before, which is, it tries to bring in a way all the program together by working on something very specific, but applying, as much as possible of the work that they've done in the MBA. We have a very, very diverse class. Usually we have about between 25 and 30 countries represented in the class, about 40% from Europe, about I would say 25% from between North America and South America, about 10% from Africa. So the diversity of the class is actually fantastic. We obviously have diverse backgrounds. We would never admit, 30 or 40 engineers or 30 or 40 lawyers. We have a broad diversity of backgrounds. And these are people that have actually, like I think I mentioned before, some 15 years of experience at least. Some of them have more. And so the class discussions between the students themselves, which we try to foster quite a bit, are very enriching, not only for the students, but sometimes, oftentimes, actually, I should say, for the professors too. And finally, I maybe I should point out that, all the places where we actually take students to. So this is not, coming to Barcelona all the time. Like I mentioned before, we start in Barcelona, but then we start going New York, San Francisco, Shanghai, and Munich, and Sao Paulo. And if we partner with CEIBS, we also take them to Southeast Asia and Africa, which are where mostly they base their elective. So I think that if you put all those pieces together, the type of program, the teaching methodology, the places where we go, the composition of the class, I think that if you put all that together, that takes us to the place where we are right now in terms of the reputation of the Global Executive MBA. One of the reasons we call it global is not only because we have people from all over the world, because the MBA has the same, but we also call this program global because we take them to many different places and we always try to expose them. So the places are not randomly chosen. So we have, we come to Europe to 2 places, at least Barcelona and Munich. We go to North America, to New York and Shanghai. We go to Asia and we go to Shanghai. We go to Latin America and we go to Sao Paulo. And we try to give people a very broad perspective of how to do business in different places. So, some of the modules, as a matter of fact, in January, we will be taking a group to San Francisco for 2 weeks. It's San Francisco, Silicon Valley, because we go back and forth between the two. And in that particular module, I would say that about 50% of the time is outside of the classroom and visiting companies and, having guest speakers. And so, every time that we go to a place, we try to expose people to what's going on in that place, how business is done in that place. And that is a reason for going to all those different places. And that's why we try to cover Europe, Latin America, North America, South America or Latin America, Asia. And once again, once we are partnered with SIP, so we also have an elective in Accra that some students choose to go to. And as a matter of fact, we have about, I would say, between 8 and 10% of the students in our program, they come from Africa. So some of them are not only interested in our program, but our students are also interested in learning the experience from Africa too. So I would say that one of the reasons why we call this program global is because we take them to places to observe how business is done, to interact with business people on the ground. And there's a lot of course, there's a lot to learn from all those trips, which, as you can imagine, all this has been severely disturbed by COVID. But, we, little by little, we're beginning to see light at the end of the tunnel. It affected us hugely because, as you can imagine, we had a class that had done module 1, that is the first 2 weeks in Barcelona, and soon after COVID hit. And so we basically, most of Europe was confined in different degrees. In the rest of the world, the story was not too different. So we basically put the program on standstill. And so, we had a lot of these town hall meetings online with the students to explore what we were going to do. We offered the possibility of continuing the program online, and most of the students actually were not inclined to do that. It was not our favorite choice either, but we had to contemplate the possibility that people kept, wanted to keep going with the program. But that was a possibility that neither we liked that much nor students liked too much. So we stopped for about 6 months or so. Then what we did during that time was to actually give them some off-curriculum courses online, short courses, like 3-session courses where we would mostly explore a topic. So we did 3 or 4 of those during the time where we had a standstill. And then little by little, what we did was, try to keep pushing with the program, but not exactly to the cities we had planned originally. So, for example, as you probably know, the United States had a travel ban from people coming from Europe and other places of the world too. That affected us hugely because we have 2 core modules in the program in the US, New York and San Francisco, and we have 1 elective in New York. And so, that had a terrible impact on us, and we started changing cities. And, I think that most of the cities that we went to as replacements of both New York and San Francisco on the one hand and Shanghai on the other were well received. So we took people to Dubai, we took people to Toronto, we took people to Mexico City, and things worked out pretty well, but that implied a huge amount of work that we had never actually expected to do. So it was the changing of the cities. In one case, in only one program, we had to change the calendar, mostly because we were actually had the program on standstill for about 6 months. So we had what we call the GEMBA 20, which is the one that was going to graduate in 2020. That had completed the core part of the course, and it was affected only in the electives and in the graduation and final week. But mostly, we're done with that program, and we still have to do with them. We offer them as a makeup because they did the elective modules online. We offer as a makeup that after graduation, they could take 2 electives face-to-face. And so some of them will be joining us, for example, in New York next month for one of the electives that we offer for the next class. GEMBA 21, which should have graduated in 21, but is going to graduate actually in 22, is going, and mostly that's the one that's been mostly affected because they were supposed to graduate in June of this year, but they will graduate in April of next year. So with them, we had to redo the calendar. We redo a lot of the cities, but mostly now we actually finished the last core module in Toronto about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and now they move into the electives, and that's why they go to New York next month. So that was the program that was mostly affected because with them we had to change the calendar, not only the cities that we were going to. And then what we call GEMBA 22, that program is on schedule. We only had to change one city because our Module 2 was going to take place in New York. There was still a travel ban, and so we ended up going to Toronto. But from this point on, beginning on January, when we take them to San Francisco and Silicon Valley, we expect, crossing fingers here, but we expect that from that point on, we can actually deliver everything that we promised them to deliver in terms of cities and in terms of dates. But, the bottom line, it was a huge disruption, huge amount of work, and, the disappointment from the side of the students, not necessarily with us, but, with the situation at large. But of course, you're on the other side and you have to respond. So we had no playbook, no school had any playbook for this. We never knew how to, improvise a city or a date because we never had to do that before. And so I'm sure we learned a lot, and I'm sure we're doing it now a lot better than we did it a year and a half ago. But it was stressful, but you always have to look at the bright side and say, well, maybe I learned some things, or I went to some places that otherwise I wouldn't have learned and I wouldn't have gone to. So, there's always a good side to everything. Most of our programs are run very highly, not just the regular MBA and Global Executive MBA, but also in executive education, we've been top number 1 for a while, according to some of the rankings. I think that we put a lot of time in trying to understand what people need and what people want, and we try to deliver that. Here, there's always a sort of tradition of excellence in teaching. So you'll have professors that actually spend a lot of time preparing sessions. And sometimes, there are sessions that you tend to repeat because they're kind of the core part of what you repeat from year to year with updates. But then there's a whole bunch of executive education and mostly custom programs in which you have to actually come up with something new every time. And so I think that, part of the reputation of the school goes down to say, we have clients and students, participants and students that are very demanding. They pay a lot of money for coming here. And so the other side of that is that they're very demanding. And we have to raise to the challenge and meet their expectations or, overpass those expectations. So besides being intensive in research, which is something that's been given at IESE increasing importance over time, I think that the excellence in teaching, or the push for excellence in teaching, will never go away. Knowing that you have in front of you people that have a very high cost opportunity in terms of time, that they're leaving a lot of things behind that they could be doing, but they're not doing because they're sitting in front of you. And that's something that always resonates with us. And we try to deliver things that are consistent with that. So I think that I would say that that's one of the main things that we tend to offer. The fact that we're always very aware that the people that come here, they have a high opportunity cost, and we have to deliver in what their expectations are and do at least as well, and probably, hopefully even better than that, in terms of everything that we actually offer to them once they're interacting with us.